But what we're virtually going to do is we are going to create an object and we're going to then run it over time, okay? So I just did a small little demo. This little receipt that's still in my back pocket, we're going to go like this, okay? We need to create an object. I assigned it to More Digital Ideas, which was a vendor, okay? That eventually I'm going to have to pay.
So the object is just all the
The object, okay, so one of the cups, and what we're going to actually do, we actually have some labels that we're going to actually end up labeling some of these different pieces of the cups. We're going to put the label on this one and call it main. What are the main pieces that I said? It was $100, it was on the 19th, it was to More Digital Ideas. Those are what we call the main, okay? And then, if I did tons of line items, I would have one that's called line items. And I would basically put a little piece of paper in this little cup that says, hey, I put this under client meals, okay? And then I would say, hey, I also paid for it through Visas. So I have main, line items, and I have the payment section as far as what would be going on. Behind the scenes, I also have a thing called history. So if I were to actually go back there, it would say, Brandon created this, he added the line item, and then he added the payment to it. And then if, depending on what else I did, it's actually just putting some stuff in behind the scenes, okay? And then I said, hey, I need this to be on account. So as soon as I say bye and leave it alone, if I were to scan it, I would need another little thing. The reason I say that we're creating an object is basically what we do is we create the main object and it is connected to different things. So if I had a label, main, line items, payments, system history, and photos, I could start sticking pieces into this little teeny little piece, okay? Then what I do is I leave it alone. I tucked it into bed, it's just going and going and going. It starts moving over time, okay? That just happens naturally because we can't control that piece. That's just like what's going on. Well, basically, eventually, tomorrow, I'd do the exact same thing, okay? When we go to pay for this whole thing, let me just throw a couple cups on here. Say that it's this exact same thing that we did tomorrow, okay? When we get the whole thing done like this, eventually I want to pay for this thing. These things are going through time. So what I do is I'm like, okay, I've got individual objects that are carrying their own baggage, they're doing their own thing. And the cool thing is because we're running it over time, just like that one little picture we showed, imagine all the cars and stuff and you could be at whatever level you want. Because we're running it over time, when I'm ready and I'm saying, okay, time to pay for it, guess what I virtually do? I load this thing up with whatever I want, and this one now becomes its own little piece that will then carry the baggage of the others. And so at any point in time, if I were to look back in time, say we actually paid for it a week from today, okay? So next Tuesday I got paid. That's when we created this big, huge one. Well, if we wanted to go back in time and do any accounting, guess what we do? We virtually run the playhead back, and we go, where were you at what time? This wouldn't have even existed, and this would have been in a different state or status, or may not have even been entered. And so that's virtually how you're able to kind of track back, and we track back to the different certain sections of what's happening. So we physically do not do a journal entry or a thing like that that's typical in accounting. So what I'd like you guys to do, to start off, we're just going to kind of play with it. We've got enough for you guys each to take a cup that has some labels. And so here's some pens. Go ahead and grab a cup that has labels in it. And I need you guys to grab a pen. And I'm going to have you guys each, can you help me hand those out right there? Here's a cup that has some labels. You've got one, you've got one? Awesome. Shannon? Okay, so the first one we're going to do is we have to create the main. The main is basically just the item that ends up being the placeholder. So take one of these little labels right here and write the word main. M-A-I-N. Hopefully your pen works. Then as you're doing that, I'm going to kind of pass just a couple of these little cups around for you so you can grab a bunch so you can label.
And then you want to put what's in our main?
Okay, not on this. What I'm doing is just labeling a cup called main. Alrighty? probably should have had some markers, huh?
Is it not working?
I'll try to do both.
It is.
Zoom in on somebody that's doing something, anything that's a workshop, you know, make it like it's part of it.
Okay, what would another little label need that we would need?
Line items.
Can you pass
Line
the stack?
items.
Can you pass the, oh,
Yes, yes.
You're right here, sorry. No.
Here's more cups. Line items is the next one. And now what would a line item be? Let's talk invoices for a second.
It could be paying for an expense, it could be paying for inventory.
Okay, so you're actually talking on kind of the expense side. If we're talking on an invoice side, I'm selling to a customer. So all of a sudden it's like, she
Yeah,
wanted,
for product.
she wanted the Big Mac. So this is an interesting concept. I have a receipt in my pocket. I'm calling it a receipt, but guess what they call it when they give it to me? That's their invoice.
Invoice.
So sometimes they play opposite roles. It depends on which side of the fence you're on. Does that make sense how that works? So like, to me, I'm going to invoice because I want it to be my products going out and I want to collect money. But to them, they're like, oh, sweet, I got a receipt for what I paid for. So
Right.
it totally depends on which part of that fence you're on. The same happens with a PO. Like, if I get something from somebody, I'm going to call that a purchase order. They might call that an invoice, okay? Because they sold something to me.
Right.
So that there are some, and sometimes that throws people, but it does change. It depends on which side of the fence you're on. So everybody has main, everybody has line items? Awesome. What is another possibility that we might need, or a little container to put something in?
Payment type.
Payments. Let's just put payments. And that's kind of just general. So invoices have tons of payments, huh? So do expenses. So do POs. Deposits, not so much.
Right.
Do you want me to make your labels?
That'd be great.
Perfect. Okay, who has another idea? What's another possible thing that we might, a little container that might be a part of like our invoices or our general objects that we're going to end up creating?
Photos.
Photos. Let's go photos/scans, okay? Just so it kind of helps us out. Photos/scans. Okay, who knows what another one might be? And not every single item is going to have all of these pieces, okay? So this is kind of cool. What I wanted to do, the reason we're using plates and cups is because this allows us to stack and be dynamic. If I did something like this, look, it's still an object and it still has certain things, but what's different about this versus this?
You're limited.
Okay, I'm locked into something, okay? I'm locked into something, and guess what? Every single one that I create has to carry this much weight and baggage, which is good or bad, it depends. But if I do it this way, I can basically say, I have one of these, 17 of these, 4 of these. But if I go this, I'm like, oh man, it doesn't really fit very well. But it's a great object. Does that make the difference?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is static. This would be dynamic because we can change it, we can add, edit, we can subtract, okay? So I've got main, line items, payments, photos, scans. Okay, what's another one that we need?
History.
Reimbursement?
Okay, reimbursement is just a subtype. That's actually not, it wouldn't be its own little thing. Okay, I heard histories. Let's do system history, okay? Because there's a difference between a user history or a system history. Let's go system history. Now this is controlled behind the scenes. As you're logged in, we follow you, okay? This is the audit trail. This is the automatic, hey, he said to do this. Okay, what's another possibility? And once again, we're not going to use these on all of the different things, but I want to show you that any model that you want to put through this, you just pick and choose which pieces you want to use, okay?
Inventory.
Okay, inventory we're going to end up adding to line items. So
Okay.
let's, we can actually add one for parts because on an invoice, and I'm not trying to be technical here, but technically the line items will end up holding parts. I got 4 of this and 6 of this and 7 of this and 12 of this and this, but it's actually connected to another little sub piece that holds all that information. What is my part number? What's my, we just broke from a one-to-many relation to a one-to-many-to-many. Okay, so I'm not trying to be technical at all, but just so that you can basically see, it would be like this. If this right here were your invoice, and I had one line item right here, and I had a certain thing, and I had another line item right here, that becomes a one-to-many. But each of these line items are connected to this, which is connected to additional histories, and so it kind of starts stacking it. That's a one-to-many-to-many. But the more we can actually think of this, it'll help you out. One-to-manys are used everywhere, everywhere. One keyboard has many, many keys. One hand has many, many fingers. One finger has many, many joints. Like that's a one-to-many-to-many, okay? Every single thing, if you can start looking at it, you're like, oh, I could build that. Like you just have to realize that's actually how you build objects, okay? And I'm not trying to be super technical, and I'm not trying to turn you into database masters. This is what Adilas does. We run real life scenarios, and then the only way that we can physically track them is to actually build real live objects that are almost quasi-similar or like simulating those type of interactions. Okay, how about another one? Let's call it Flex Grid. And some of you guys are like, oh, what is that?
I didn't think of that. I just use it.
Okay, so I imagine somebody's like, what in the Sam Hill is Flex Grid? Anybody have a way of explaining that really quick?
You can tie information from an expense to a deposit.
Okay, that's one way.
It's linking and tying information throughout the system. I don't know the proper way to say it.
No, you're doing excellent.
A good example is you take credit card payments from your customers or your clients. A lot of times your credit card company will charge you a fee upon that transaction. I will flex tie grid my expense of the credit card fee to my deposit of that monetary that went into my bank on that specific invoice or what's related to it.
Okay, so in a nutshell, and we will talk a little bit more about FlexGrid. FlexGrid is a piece of the application where we're like, hey, we're going to let you be super custom. You're going to be able to detail this whole thing out. And in case you need some extra needs, here's an extra one that you can kind of customize. Okay, so FlexGrid does mainly 3 things, and these are very, very general, and we can be more specific in a minute. Okay, one of them is a user-maintained history. Say we're doing this invoice, and Johnny comes in and he's really sick, and he whatever. Okay, oh, I better record that I told Johnny that if he came back and paid this by this time, I would give him a discount. Okay, that's a user-maintained history. You could use FlexGrid for that. Okay. Another way that you can use Flex, there's 3 different ways, okay? I'm going to kind of try to cover them. So a user-maintained history, we have 15 custom fields that you can make. So say you're doing invoices and Adilas has all of these cool things, and you're like, oh man, on my invoices, I need to actually track all these little special serial numbers. I want to sell you 500 widgets, but I also need to track every single 500 of these serial numbers, okay? Like, you could totally set it up so it's like, 500, here's your bill, thank you. And then in the background, you go, electric, tick, 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 tick. Like say you have a barcode scanner, and you go, bam, 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 bam. And you add all 500 of these things, and so it's basically, it's like, okay, I'm holding this other extra information. 15 custom fields for any of the main 12 players, okay? So like, that's one of the other pieces. User-maintained, custom fields is a huge thing for FlexGrid. And then the third one that FlexGrid does is it allows you to create relationships that are not normally established. So on an invoice is automatically, it loves deposits, because guess what? Invoice gets money, and eventually you deposit. That's a natural relationship. But what happens if all of a sudden you're like, this invoice, I already deposited, oh man, now I have to pay a refund back to so-and-so and I want to make sure and tie it to that money going out. That's a non-normal standard thing. So what Sherry would basically say in that exact same thing, this invoice that I sold to Johnny, actually I had to pay him back something over here on this expense, okay? So basically what happens is you're creating a buddy system. If I land on this expense, what is this 20 bucks that went out to Johnny? Oh, it's tied over here to the invoice that went, so vice versa, you basically create a buddy system. Hey, I'm with you. We'll just keep going, we're still on our path, but what happens is if I land on either spot or whatever happens, I can tell the story. Who's your buddy? Oh, Brandon. Oh, I'm over here. And I'm like, it virtually creates a buddy system, okay? So those are the three things. Who can help me tell them one more time? Just in a nutshell, FlexGrid. We have one of them is what?
User-maintained histories.
User-maintained histories. What's another one?
Custom fields.
Custom fields, up to 15 custom fields if you wanted, okay? What's another way that we use FlexGrid?
Buddy system.
The buddy system. That's awesome, okay? And that's literally what it is. It's the buddy system.
Brenda?
Yeah.
Okay, so would this be where, when we were talking expense earlier, so you put in your receipt,
Yep.
is let's say that I was doing a specific job for somebody, a client, and I
Okay.
needed to be reimbursed for that expense. So I need to track all the expenses that I've paid out and in turn be able to turn around and invoice them. Would that be what you're talking, the buddy system, that I could track all my
Absolutely.
expenses in relationship
Absolutely.
to that specific client?
We have covered FlexGrid, literally just the tip of the iceberg. The FlexGrid is your custom piece of the application. And the cool thing is if you don't want to use it and if it scares you, it just happens to exist and just happily just floats there. But if you're like, oh my goodness, I need this and this and I want to tie it to this and I want to do this and this, like, we're like, hey, I'm going to be kind of selfish here, but I'm like, buddy, don't bother me. I don't want to hear that you want this field and this field and this field. You have up to 15. Make your own. Add it in however you want. Like do this and this and this and tie it together. And like it basically allows you to do that. Like if some of you guys are rednecks, I hope not to offend you, but this is like duct tape and baling twine. This is also like a pickup, okay? Like you literally, you can't go to a dealership and say, okay, what do you do with your pickup? It's like, I'm gonna haul something. I'm gonna, like this is your extra. This is your custom piece, okay? And you can tweak it out as far as you want, or if you don't want it, your pickup can be the nice ride that you ride to work every day, okay? It's really that flexible. User-maintained histories, custom fields, and buddy systems. Tie it to anything, okay? And you can tie it to multiple pieces. I can guess what? Son, mother, customer. I could make a buddy system between this, okay? Son, mother, daughter, father. Whatever we need to do, like, it could all be within one of those 12 main application types, or it could be you are tied to this invoice and this invoice and this invoice, and we ended up doing a special PO and we paid for it by this way. Like, that's not a normal system type thing, but if you wanted to, you can virtually create that buddy system, okay? Those are the three things that a FlexGrid does, those basic things. Okay, is there anything else that we have that's going on? We have main. Let's see if we can get everything in line here. I've got main. Everybody got main?
Got me.
Line items.
Got him.
Payments is next.
Okay.
Okay. The next thing we have is, let's go user maintained system histories.
Okay.
And let's go photos and scans.
Okay.
And let's go FlexGrid.
Okay.
Awesome. So with these little teeny pieces right here, we can do virtually anything. You guys want to challenge me, and then I'm gonna turn it on you so that you can kind of practice and play, and you're gonna do it with a buddy, okay? Why don't you give me a challenge? I have all of these pieces, and I can go any way. If I can make an expense, I can make an invoice, I can make a PO, I can make, whatever I want. Why doesn't somebody give me a challenge, and I'll see if I can build it for you, just to kind of give you the idea. Anybody have an idea?
Sherry does, I think.
Okay, Sherry O. And just for fun, it could be that you go buy something, or that you're paying for something, or whatever.
I am going to pay, I'm going to pay Brandon more digital designs
Okay.
for all his hard work.
Okay. So
He accepts contributions to that too.
I know, he loves candy too.
I do love candy. So you are a company, and did I submit an invoice to you? Or?
You did, sir.
Okay.
You did.
So my portion would be I would create an invoice for you, and then you would virtually pay that invoice off.
Right.
Okay. Which part do you want me to do?
Create my invoice, sir.
Okay. So I'm going to bill her. Okay. I'm going to bill her. What's your company name?
XYZ.
XYZ? Okay, perfect. On my particular one, actually, if you still have some things, let's actually do vendors, vendor payees, and customers, okay? We have 2 more that we need to do.
Sure, I can make it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Vendor payees, and customers.
I'm doing mine in Spanish.
We didn't know we had to do the bilingual part here.
You made me this really cool, awesome website. That's what we
Okay, okay, great. Great, I'm gonna bill you for a website, alrighty?
Okay.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create an invoice. She doesn't even know that I'm doing this. Basically, I did some work for her, and I'm going to now do it so that I can basically tie it to her, okay? So I need to start a main, okay? As part of my main, the main, this is kind of creating this little small object. I'm gonna actually move this right here just for a second, just so it doesn't convolute the little demo. So I'm gonna create a main, okay? Inside of this main, I'm actually gonna attach it to a customer. What's your name of your
Sherry's Farm.
Sherry's Farm? Okay, I now have a
That's even
customer. Okay, this is actually technically tied to the main, so I'm actually going to go like this. Okay, just so it kind of looks like I'm tying something together. Okay, these guys are semi-connected, but they're connected to the main. Okay, that's a little special relationship right there. Okay, and how much am I billing you? Is that what I
You
get to
did the
decide?
work, sir.
Sweet. Okay, so I'm going to grab some line items right here, and line items, and I'm going to just say, hey, this is a $2,000 website. Okay, I put one little line item in there, and I say $2,000.